Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Glowing Card Gaming. And again, I'm your host, Adam. I know a lot of the videos lately have not been gaming, um, so maybe the channel should just be called Glowing Card. Kind of forget the gaming part. We'll see how it goes moving forward. I do plan on going back and playing through some games and stuff. But I had the idea of making a slightly different video tonight. Um, I went and I saw Interstellar last night, and it got me thinking about, some things I used to contemplate all the time, like the forces and the matter of the universe, and how many dimensions do we really live in? Now, the conventional theory is like 11. We live in 11 dimensions. I don't know what all those dimensions are, per se, but it got me thinking about time and how we perceive time and how we live in time and what that actually means. By this, I mean dimensionally, how do we view time? To kind of define it, I believe we can think of time in the same way we think of space. And in truth, most scientists would agree that time and space are kind of one and the same thing, and they usually call it time space. But there are more dimensions to time than that. The way we perceive time or interact with it is just on a single point, a wave riding through time space, only existing at a single point in all of history at any single time. So, thinking about it that way, we we really exist in one-dimensional time. If you think about what one dimension is in terms of physical space, generally it's accepted as just a point, a single point with no height or width, but maybe some depth, or height but no width or depth. You get where I'm going with this. Mathematically, you can also view this as a single line, and the line can be any shape you want. Just a line from point A to point B, or an infinite line from one origin of infinity to another origin of infinity, traveling in a straight line. Or it could be curved, or it could be, spiral, or whatever shape you want to imagine. But one-dimensionally, it's only a single point. Or the line, I guess, could be multiple points, but just on a single line. Now, thinking of it that way, I would say we exist in time as if we are on a ray. A ray is a line that starts at a point and then goes one direction to infinity. And it's usually drawn with a dot, a line, and a little arrow at the end to kind of show that mathematically. So you can think of us in that same way. We exist at this point, and we are traveling through time to this point. Now, if we continue this theory out into different dimensions, but we think about time in this way, then the second dimension of time would be like a plane with length and width, but no height. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, when you think about it, to me, it would look like kind of like the same thing, a line, but instead of being traveling one way down it, you travel throughout the line as you see fit. Not only that, but if you change something, the line shifts because time is no longer the same. But you would also have the ability to undo that change and shift it back to the original point. So then, thinking about all the things you could change at all those points, it would present a two-dimensional plane, right? If you think about it in that way. And from each change on that line as it shifted, you could then change any other point in that newly formed line. That's why it makes the plane, because it's infinite in the amount of changes you could make and shift in that plane. But again, why it's only two dimensions is you only exist at a single point traveling back and forth across time, right? So that's the plane of time. Now, if we go ahead and move further along with this logic and think about it even further, we come to three-dimensional time, which does have length, width, and height. What does that look like? Well, I think it would be where you exist at all points in time in all changes of reality possibly made. I know that's a really difficult way to describe it, but let me try to expand and explain that. So, what I mean is that you exist at all points in time simultaneously. You see everything all at once, everywhere. You not only see, like, for example, in our timeline, you see some significant event, the birth of Christ, 9/11, something like that. But you also see the other one. And not only that, but you see all the other things in between and beyond through the entire length of time all at once. But here's the real mind twist to it. We incorporate two-dimensional time into that. And now you not only exist in this singular time, in all points of that time, but you also exist in all alternate points from that time. Okay? So now you have a plane, but you exist at all points in all of those realities and all those planes. Okay? That's three-dimensional time. I know it's a very difficult concept to grasp. But that's how I have come to think of it. Now we have four-dimensional time. What does that look like? That's the really more interesting concept to think about. I think somebody who would exist in four-dimensional time would be able to create and shift three-dimensional time in any way they chose or saw fit. Meaning they could rearrange time any way they saw fit. Now, how is that different than three-dimensional time if you're making change to it? It's more of like, instead of making a different decision or flipping the coin just a little bit harder, so instead of landing on heads, it comes up tails. And those two different realities coming from it. You shift and actually create multiple coins. And all of these coins come up all different sorts of ways, so to speak. This is a very difficult concept to get. It's almost like four-dimensional reality. If you ever have watched Carl Sagan's video on explaining four-dimensional reality, he starts out by explaining one and two-dimensional realities. But then he talks about a three-dimensional object intruding onto a two-dimensional plane. In this case, he uses an apple because it's not a perfect shape. Meaning, when the apple goes through a two-dimensional space, it starts out with those 5 points on the bottom of the apple. And as it progresses through, the apple in that plane gets different shapes. So, in the same way, we can then extrapolate what a three-dimensional object might look like in a two-dimensional space. And then further to extrapolate, that three-dimensional object goes in, or a fourth-dimensional object passing through a three-dimensional plane like ours. What would that look like? Well, we wouldn't see it all at once, just like the apple going through the two-dimensional plane. In this case, he does use one of the most simple examples because it's one of the easiest to comprehend in our three-dimensional space. A four-dimensional object will start as a single point, and we'll use a spherical object. So as the fourth-dimensional object comes through our three-dimensional space, it'll start at a single point, and that sphere will actually grow as it passes through to its maximum dimension, whatever that is, and then shrink back down to a single point. Just imagine a pulsing orb of some type, expanding and contracting, and then going out of existence, coming in, going out of existence. So, in kind of the same way, we have to think about four-dimensional time in this same way. So you could call it multiple dimensions or multiple universes being created and intruding upon each other in time. So when you're doing a coin flip, you're actually taking one dimension and expanding and colliding it with multiple other dimensions of time. But all of those dimensions of time are actually one singular dimension, making it four dimensions in this same way. Now, I think the best way to describe that in more of a layman term would be not only to exist in all of time and space simultaneously everywhere all at once, but there might be two ways to describe this. One, to exist in every dimension of space that's possible, simultaneously, all at once, everywhere. Or two, to exist outside of time and space, meaning you exist outside of the universe as we know it. But you also exist simultaneously inside the universe as we know it. Both places all at once. And the way that time would work is probably beyond our comprehension. Because it would work inside of our universe the same way we see it now or perceive it. But whoever would be experiencing four-dimensional time would perceive it all at once, both in infinity and in a single instant. They would exist in multiple ways throughout time all at once. That's four-dimensional time. That's a really difficult concept to think about. Another trick or something else to think about in four-dimensional time is if somebody can exist in four-dimensional time, they could probably manipulate time any way they saw fit. So they could exist at two separate points in time that are not consecutive. Think about, in this case, time laid out like the keys of a piano. And time is hitting each key in line, in scale, down that piano. Both the white keys, the black key, the white key, the black key, the white key, the white key, on and on down the line. Well, somebody existing in four-dimensional time could actually exist at this black key and then this white key over here at the same time, not existing at any of these other points or outside of those points, just at these 2 points, or 5 points, or 100 points. They could exist however they wanted. Just some interesting thoughts on time. I know that's all very complex. Maybe it's nonsensical and maybe even non-scientific. I don't know what the math behind any of that would be. I'm not even inclined to find out. But just some things on time that I was thinking about. And what brought that about, I don't know if I mentioned it, but last night, the reason I didn't have a video last night was that I went to see Interstellar. And I'd only seen that movie, I think, one time before. But I did think I saw it in theaters. And I thought that movie was a lot drier than it was. Turns out it wasn't that dry. It was very, very interesting. And I'd forgotten that the cast of that movie was, who the cast was. They were all really top-notch, great actors, in my opinion. And they did a good job on that movie. And then the second time through the movie, it was just so much better. And the concepts of space-time in there, and the way that they were delivered, was actually pretty amazing. I would highly recommend going and seeing that. But just relax when you see it. You don't have to think about anything. Just enjoy the ride. Okay. I'm going to end it there. That's all I'm going to have for you tonight. Very heavy. Extremely heavy video. And, I was going to apologize for that, but I don't apologize for that. I found this topic to be extremely interesting. And I hope you do too. And maybe I'm full of it. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. But the concepts there seem to make sense if you just really stop and think about it. I don't know. Again, thank thank everybody for joining me on Glowing Card Gaming. Again, I am your host, Adam, as always. And I'll see you next time. Until then, be good to each other.